Right, let's get this show on the road. Welcome to today's midday briefing. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of March. Suite à la réunion des chefs de cabinet qui a eu lieu hier, je suis en mesure de vous confirmer l'agenda du collège de demain. Il est très court. Le collège discutera d'une proposition sur l'extension de l'utilisation des outils et processus numériques dans le domaine du droit des sociétés. L'utilisation des outils et processus numériques dans le domaine du droit des sociétés. Le compte-rendu vous sera présenté par le commissaire Didier Reynders à la fin de la réunion. Soyez attentifs à l'heure à laquelle aura lieu le compte-rendu, étant donné que c'est le seul point de substance à l'ordre du jour du collège et que donc le compte-rendu pourrait avoir lieu un peu plus tôt. Then, concerning today's council meetings, energy ministers are meeting and are expected to make progress on key legislation for the clean energy transition, and preparations for next winter. Commissioner Kelly Simpson is taking part in the meeting on behalf of the Commission. The Commission will present our recent proposals to reform the EU's electricity market. The ministers will aim to reach a general approach on the gas decarbonization package proposed by the Commission to incentivize the uptake of clean gases and hydrogen across the EU. They will also seek a political agreement on the prolongation of coordinated gas demand reduction and receive an update on the energy situation in Ukraine from Energy Minister German Galushenko. Commissioner Simpson will participate in the press conference following the meeting, which is expected at around 5 p.m. As usual, we kindly ask you to keep your questions on energy-related issues for that press conference. Finally, as you all know, the ministers are also expected to formally adopt at around 1 p.m. the updated CO2 standards for cars. Now, we are planning to organize a technical briefing on background this afternoon to provide you with more details. Once the vote has taken place, we will keep you informed through our usual media advisory, so please be attentive to your emails, but we will wait until the proposal has been formally adopted before sending out the media advisory and doing the technical briefing. Finally, let me welcome a group of journalists from the Dominican Republic who join us in the press room today. They are on a visit which is organized by our colleagues from the External Action Service. Bienvenidos y espero que disfruten de la visita. With that, we have come to the end of our announcements and we can go to your questions. I will go to the Interactio platform. Stefano, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the floor, Stefano Pocella and Lex. So yesterday we have already spoken about the deal you have reached with Germany regarding the internal combustion engine and e-fuels, and we have discussed if e-fuels or carbon neutral fuels were into the agreement you have reached. And my understanding is that you specifically referred to e-fuels. So can you first clarify what the Commission has committed to do with a member country? And if not, can you explain why you don't want to share this with the public, if this is the case, of course? Because my understanding is that you have taken an engagement in the name of the European Union institutions, and so I guess that the public should be duly informed about what you have committed to do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stefano. I believe that Tim provided all the answers that he could provide yesterday on the specific issue that you mentioned, and as I've just said, we will come back to the issue as soon as the vote has taken place in the Energy Council today through a briefing to which I invite you to take part and during which you will be able to ask all those questions and get the answers. Okay, let me move on to other issues. Although I see one hand raised, I don't know if it's on this or on something else. Justin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I have a question on Russia sanctions, please. I would like to know why there has been no EU sanctions on Russian seaborne LNG. I read that the Commission might now encourage member states to reduce these imports. Why have there been no sanctions until now, please? And what's going on? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood what you were talking about. Seaborne? LNG. Ah, LNG, sorry. I couldn't get that. Seaborne, well, we haven't imposed sanctions on Russian oil at all. On Russian, sorry, gas. Apologies. Let me rephrase that. We have not imposed sanctions on imports of Russian gas at all. So this is not an issue of LNG or otherwise. It is Russia that has cut off gas supplies to Europe, not the other way around. And we have always said that indeed Russia has proven to be, and since in fact before the outbreak of the conflict in Ukraine, before its invasion of Ukraine, an unreliable supplier in terms of gas. But the actions to reduce supplies to Europe have been taken by Russia. Any other questions on sanctions? Justin, you have a follow-up.
Yes, I understand the pipeline situation, in fact, but given that there have been sanctions on Russian oil, I was wondering why LNG, why not LNG? Thank you.
Well, you could say why oil and not gas? You don't need to focus on LNG. What I'm saying is that the European Union has never come forward with a proposal for sanctions against gas. As we've always said, when it comes to sanctions, you need to analyze whether the sanctions are going to hurt Russia more than they hurt the European Union. That is a key factor in determining the types of sanctions that we decided to propose and that the European Union has adopted. This is a debate which took place many months ago. In the meantime, as you know, we have adopted numerous packages of sanctions, including on a vast amount of fossil fuel supplies from Russia, in particular oil and coal. As it turns out, in any case, it is the Russians who have cut the deliveries of gas to Europe, and Europe has been working very hard in order to diversify away from Russian gas and ensure that it compensates the disruptions in supply from Russia through other suppliers and other means. Okay, I see no further questions on Russian sanctions for us today, so let us move on to other issues. Yes, Ron.
Yes, Lorne Cook from the Associated Press. A UN fact-finding mission to Libya yesterday made some pretty serious allegations about human rights abuses and possible crimes against humanity in Libya when it comes to migration. It also pointed out that the EU, that it suspected the EU of abetting those kinds of crimes and abuses. I wondered firstly if you have a reaction to that, and then how concerned you might be that because you work closely with the UNHCR and the IOM, which is a UN-affiliated agency, that perhaps you may lose the backing of these two very important bodies. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter.
Thank you, Lorne. And indeed, of course, we are aware about these latest findings, and we are also very much aware about the very difficult situation on the ground, which we are trying to solve, indeed, also together and working together with the international partners, and the UN and its agencies are one of the most important partners for us on the ground. We have worked also with the UN fact-finding mission when it was in Libya, mainly through our delegation in Tripoli. So we are, of course, taking seriously the concerns they are raising. We are looking into it, and we are working with it. But let me recall again, once again, that the European Union, on one hand, is committed to do as much as we can in the current circumstances in order to help to alleviate the situation of people stranded in Libya, mainly the migrants. And we are doing it also working with other partners, with IOM, with the UN, UNHCR, etc., etc. I can maybe recall a recent meeting we had on the 20th of March, so still this month, with the partners from African Union and from the UN, this tripartite task force that was meeting in Brussels, underlined once again the determination of us, international partners, to continue to work in order to improve the situation in Libya, because there is no alternative to it. Not doing anything is not an answer, and our objective, our joint objective, is to help to improve the situation of the people stranded in Libya. And there are results. Of course, there are incidents, there are issues which are source of concern. We try to address them with the partners in Libya, with the international partners. And all these, what we are seeing and witnessing now, is just a stimulus for us to work more in order to convey to the Libyan partners to work with us on this, and also with us, with the international partners, to engage even more, because in the end, it's people we are talking about, and it's people to whom our efforts are directed at.
Follow up?
Yes, the report seems to suggest these crimes were committed by Libyan authorities, individuals, and so on, and that it's actually a good money maker for individuals, for the state, and for others. And then when it says that the European Union is providing money and support, including the refurbishment of boats and other things, aren't you a bit concerned that this is actually the business model of the smugglers, that it's using European taxpayers' money, your money and mine, to actually keep people locked in Libya rather than letting them get away when they're trying to? They specifically talk about pullbacks, so pullbacks by the Libyan Coast Guard, which is reinforced by the European Union.
Thank you. One thing which is very important to bear in mind, we are not financing any Libyan entity. We are not giving physical money to partners in Libya, exactly for these reasons. What we are doing is allocating a lot of money, which is then usually used by our international partners. A lot goes through the UN, for example, when we are doing the repatriations, when we are doing relocations through IOM or with the help of the UNHCR. I mean, I can give you some numbers. Assisted voluntary returns of over 60,000 people. So this is where the money goes. Or evacuation by UNHCR of more than 5,500 refugees from Libya. This is where the money goes. Covering the needs of the people who are in Libya, both the migrants but also the host communities which are affected by this. So this is where the money goes. So I don't agree with the claims that our money is going to finance the business model of the smugglers or of those who are misusing and mistreating people in Libya. Quite to the contrary, most of the money goes in order to take care of these very people.
Any other questions on this report for us? David.
Oui, merci Eric. Peter, apologies, you didn't answer the question on the model, the business model that Libyan authorities and Libyan Coast Guard and smugglers are using, and it's quite explained in this report. So if you can answer this question. On your website, I see that the Trust Fund for Africa has allocated more than 300 million euro in 13 projects to improve migration management. Who is the beneficiary of this 300 million euro? Thank you.
So I give the floor back to Peter, but just to say he did answer the question on the business model by saying that we disagree with the assessment. But please, Peter.
And I think I also partially answered the second one. I mean, explaining in the previous answer where the money goes. So the money goes mostly to our partner agencies, to our partners, to agencies of the UN, NGOs, to take care of the basic needs of the migrants and to make sure that these people are being taken care of. And I can rephrase or repeat the numbers I was given for the relocations, returns, etc., etc. But I think I have nothing to add to the previous answer I was giving to Lauren.
Okay, David, follow up.
Yes, thank you. I see. I see that one of the projects that you support since 2017 is to support the integrated border and migration management in Libya via the Italian government. So I would like to know if this money then stay in Italy, or is redirected to Libya. Thank you.
Okay, that would be a question more for Anna.
Many thanks, David, for the question. I think you know the answer. I mean, this is a border management program that indeed is up and running since 2017. As you know, it's implemented by the Italian Ministry of Interior. So that means that obviously all the contracting and the management of the project is done through the Italian authorities. As we've tried to explain to you up until quite recently, through this program, the Italian Ministry of Interior has trained 142 GACs. So it's, you know, that are members belonging to the force of the Libyan Coast Guards that's dealing with the internal waters. And 6 vessels that were donated by Italy have been refurbished thanks to this program and have gone back to the GACs. Now, you will recall that very recently we had a new boat that was handed over, this time for the Libyan Coast Guards, obviously because they are operating in international waters and not only, you know, and they're dependent on the Defense Ministry of Libya. Yes, we've said that the first boat was indeed delivered some weeks ago. Here again, the Italians are doing the training. So yes, this is where the money is going. Part of the support as well, you know, has been also delivered for a very basic MRCC. I think that we're all aware that there's a need to strengthen the capacities of the Libyan authorities to precisely, you know, to conduct their operations, you know, in full respect of international rights. And this is something that I think, you know, we see that there's a necessity to further strengthen. And I think that this is something that we will do because, as Peter has said, I mean, disengaging simply will not make things better for anyone. So this is what I can tell you.
David, further follow-up.
Yes, thank you for your patience. Basically, in the report on how the money is spent, that it's published, at least the first tranche, you say that this money goes for interception. This is the word that it's used in the report to improve the search and rescue and interception capacity of the Libyan Coast Guard. So, would you agree with me that the objective of this program is not just search and rescue, but interception, or, as the UN report said, pullback of migrants? Thank you.
I don't think that it's for us to agree or to disagree with how you want to qualify. I mean, I think the name of the project is border management. The vessels that have been facilitated under this program have also contributed to search and rescue operations very clearly. So I think, as we've said many times, I mean, when there's a boat in distress, it's you know, it's part of the international law to assist in the sauvetage, and you know this very well. And of course, one of the priorities also of our cooperation with partner countries is also indeed to improve governance and migration management that's fully in line with international law.
Okay, thank you. I think we will now move on to other issues. Of course, Anna remains at your disposal on this topic. We have lots of other hands raised, but I go to the room first. Yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, this is a question for Christian. This is Monica Pronchuk with the New York Times. Yesterday, President Biden issued an executive order regulating and in some cases banning the sale and use of commercial spyware. Considering recent reporting and the works by the PEGA committee at the parliament, which have documented the use and spread of such spyware in the European Union, is the Commission considering a similar move? And could you tell us where the Commission is when it comes to talks with countries like Greece that seem to have a spyware problem? Thank you.
Christian.
Hi, Monica. Thank you for your question. First of all, I don't have any particular comment on decisions by the US. This is not for us to comment, of course. I can, however, remind you of our position on this overall matter. You know that we have always made clear that any attempts by national security services to illegally access data of citizens, if confirmed, is unacceptable. At the same time, it's member states who are competent to safeguard their national security, and they must oversee and control their security services to ensure that they fully respect EU law, including fundamental rights such as the protection of personal data, safety of journalists, and freedom of expression. The investigation of such issue is the responsibility of each EU member state, and we, have made clear in several instances that we expect national authorities to thoroughly look into such allegations. As more information is becoming available on the Pegasus case, the Commission has continued to look closely into this matter. We have also at the end of last year sent letters to all member states requesting information about the use of spyware by national authorities and the legal framework governing such use. The Commission intends to do a mapping of the situation in member states and examine the interplay with EU law. We have received a number of replies to these letters, and we are at the moment looking into this.
Thank you. Any other questions on rule of law for Christian, since he is on the podium? Mathieu.
Bonjour Eric, c'est sur le comité d'éthique européen. Donc je voulais savoir quand la Commission comptait faire sa proposition, puisque la commissaire Jourová l'avait promis au Parlement d'ici à la fin du mois de mars. Donc visiblement ce n'est pas à l'ordre du jour de la réunion du collège demain. Je voulais savoir quel était le calendrier et la raison de cet éventuel retard. Merci.
Bonjour Mathieu, je n'ai pas de nouvelles concrètes à ce stade. C'est une proposition très importante, évidemment, sur laquelle nous travaillons encore. Et pour le moment, je n'ai pas de date concrète pour annoncer, mais disons stay tuned.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions état de droit pour Christian? Ça n'est pas le cas, donc nous passons à d'autres sujets. Other issues. Augustine.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I have to call Peter back. I have a question for Peter. It's on the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia. 10 days have passed since the meeting in Ohrid. What's the follow-up? Are you planning any other high-level meeting? And how do you consider the proposal or offer by the acting Prime Minister of Montenegro, Abazovic, that the next round of the high-level dialogue is organized somewhere in Montenegrin coast? Are you considering this? Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Augustin. We are pleased to see that the dialogue is becoming popular in the region and more countries are offering the possibility to host it. But let's take it step by step. I mean, the dialogue is Brussels-based, and we achieved a very important step in Ohrid by the agreement of Serbian President and Prime Minister of Kosovo, where they agreed both with the agreement and with the annex. So now the work is on implementation. What has been done, I think it was very much in an open domain to follow what was following. There was the FAC, where HRVP was briefing the foreign ministers, his fellow EU partners. There was the European Council, where EU leaders endorsed this and repeated and stressed that both parties have to proceed with the swift implementation in good faith of the commitments made. So this is what we are working on. We started on our side the institutional work in order to operationalize the first steps. That means starting to adjust EU's common position when it comes to Chapter 35 and the relevant steps also on the side of Kosovo. And the next meeting, since you were asking about high-level meetings, of course, I mean, dialogue continues. The dialogue as such continues, and there will be further high-level meetings happening. But again, we announce those as appropriate. At this stage, I can share with you that there will be next week in Brussels the meeting of chief negotiators of both sides, who were invited by the EU facilitator to come to Brussels to take forward everything that was agreed in Ohrid and to start to make first steps towards the implementation.
Any other questions on the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue or on other foreign affairs issues before we let Peter off the podium? Mindaugas.
Hello, Eric. Thank you for the floor. Mindaugas Laukagalis from Lithuania National Radio and Television. I'm not sure. I think it's for Peter. It's a question on the issue which was raised in today's political playbook concerning reimbursement of military support to Ukraine from the EPF. I have a few questions concerning that. So, first of all, do you think it is fair to give Ukraine outdated arms and then for the member states to ask the EU reimbursement at new arms price? Also, are you planning any changes to the current EPF regulations in a way that could help to prevent this? Because we understand that some countries are concerned about these schemes. And the last question, could you confirm what member states are using the current rules to almost entirely fund new arms purchasing? Thank you so much.
Set of interesting questions. Peter.
Yes, a lot of them, but of course, I mean, first important thing to stress is that we, of course, don't comment everything that is written in the media, and I can tell you only how the EPF functions. So tackling your questions one by one. The last one, it's up to the member states to disclose what they applied as reimbursements or not. This is not our role. So in this sense, the member states are best placed to disclose these details if necessary. Let's not forget that a lot of details cannot be disclosed because we are in a very hot phase of an ongoing conflict where these weapons are being supplied. So disclosing details might provide the unnecessary advantage to the enemy who is watching this very carefully. With your first question, there is no such thing as providing outdated equipment. What we are providing for Ukraine, or what the EU is reimbursing and what the member states are supplying to Ukraine, is first of all based on the needs as defined by the Ukrainian defense forces. In other words, we are giving Ukraine what Ukraine is asking for, if we have it available. The reimbursements and the whole system of functioning of the EPF is in the hands of the member states. The EPF is intergovernmental instrument. This is an instrument in the hands of the member states. So member states define the criteria, member states define the procedures. So this is all happening in a very transparent way under the control of the EU member states. So the criteria have been defined, the reimbursement rates have been defined. The reimbursement is following the procedure stating that everyone gets the same share. That means the same percentage of equipment or supplies provided are being reimbursed. Let's not forget EPF so far 3.6 billion plus 2 billion now recently added for ammunition. But this is not everything Ukraine is getting. Member states are providing much more on their own bilaterally. So this is also something to bear in mind. But again, what the criteria of the EPF reimbursement are saying, as agreed unanimously by the member states, is that we respond to the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces. So one of the criteria is to compare every claim for reimbursement with the needs defined by the Ukrainian side. And then, of course, we take into account other criteria, again, defined jointly by the member states. So I hope this explains the procedure as much as we can share at this stage.
Okay, any other questions on the EPF or on arms deliveries to Ukraine? Mindaugas, you have a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you. Just a really quick follow-up. I will ask it from the different perspective. So, for example, if there's a gun and it costs 1,000 euros, but it costed that like 10 years ago. And the problem, I think, which some countries are raising right now, is that countries give that weapon, that arm to Ukraine, which was, which is basically outdated. Now it costs less than 10 years ago or so. But they are asking from the EPF the original price, the 1,000 euros. So do you think it's fair to give Ukraine weapons which, which price has lowered down, and then buy new arms from that? I don't know if you understand, but thank you for the floor.
Mindaugas, thank you for giving us a 101 in accounting and in depreciation value of assets. That reminds me of my first year in business school. I think that we understood perfectly the question that you asked. It's not rocket science. It's a perfectly legitimate way of presenting things. But I think that Peter has given you the answer that he can give you. But I give him the floor again.
There is one more element I can add, and sorry for omitting it in my first answer. When you are asking about the so-called outdated equipment, let's not forget, there is not such a thing as outdated equipment. There is effective equipment, what Ukrainians can use in order to defend themselves against the brutal, inhuman, illegal aggression. And when it comes to the old type of weapons, or let's call them Soviet type of weapons, these were very useful, especially in the first part of the conflict, because this is what the Ukrainian army was equipped with. This is what the Ukrainian fighters could operate and were trained to use. So this was also a very important element of EU support to Ukraine, to support them the weapons they can immediately and effectively use. Outdated weapon, well, as long as the weapon is firing, let's say, or is effective and is wanted by the Ukrainians, it makes a difference. And this is the point. We respond to the needs by Ukrainians. And on your follow-up question, I mean, there are discussions among the member states about every possible detail, not only about support to Ukraine, but all the other policies we are doing together. But then again, there are appropriate platforms to conduct these discussions. And EPF is the amazing instrument where the member states are sitting and co-deciding. So if anyone has any concerns, they can very happily raise these concerns and deal with those concerns within the appropriate forums among themselves.
Okay, this is all we can say on this issue, I think. So let's move on to other foreign affairs questions for Peter. If you have a foreign affairs related question, I go to Dorian or Bogdan. Not quite sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
We'd like to see you as well. There you go. Go ahead.
Do you see me now?
We do indeed.
Okay, this is Bogdan Isopescu from Radio Romania News. It is correct to presume that all those member states that join the mechanism will provide ammunition both for national stocks and Ukraine, or not?
I'm not sure I perfectly understood the question. Well, there are two pillars in the plan. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, also, again, not really sure about the content of the question, but maybe again to explain how it works. And you are obviously referring to the latest decisions about the ammunition, where there is a three-track approach. One is that for 1 billion euros from the EPF, the member states will provide whatever they have when it comes to the necessary ammunition from their stocks, what they have available right now. Then another billion is to get the stuff wherever they can. So that's the second track, second step. And of course, I mean, they cannot be left without ammunition for their own defense and for their own needs. And the third track is to ramp up the defense industry, the production capacities of the European producers. So this is all, you cannot separate these tracks, all goes together. But of course, if you are providing ammunition to Ukraine as a member state, I think it's your national security interest to make sure that you have also some stocks available for your immediate security needs.
Voilà, so basically it's both, if we understood your question correctly. You have a follow-up, Bogdan.
Yes, in Romania there is a lot of silence about this, let's call delivering ammunition to Ukraine. So I don't know at this time if Romania ever delivers something to Ukraine. So that's my question. For example, the Institute for World Economy Tracker said that Romania didn't deliver any ammunition to Ukraine. The Romanian officials said nothing about this. So I'm trying to understand if this mechanism, if it's correct to presume that Romania signing this mechanism, if Romania signing this mechanism will provide both to national stocks and to Ukraine with ammunition. Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you. The main objective of this three-track approach in this specific mechanism is, of course, to make sure that Ukraine gets the ammunition. So the whole idea of the issue and of the exercise is to make sure that member states are able to provide ammunition, first of all, to Ukraine, but not at the expense of their own security needs. That's one thing. The second thing is, whatever each of the member states decides to provide or not to provide, when and how it's done, it's their national decision. There are countries who are quite open in the public about what they are providing to Ukraine and how much. There are countries who prefer not to disclose this source of details because, again, this is a sensitive information and in specific context of the ongoing conflict. So you would need to ask the Romanian authorities if they feel free and comfortable to disclose this information. For us, it's important that there is absolute EU unity on this and that so far every decision we made when it comes to support of Ukraine, be it financial, economic, humanitarian, civilian and military, was done by unanimity of all our member states.
Thank you. Other questions on the EPF? Christian.
Oui. Est-ce que vous me voyez? Est-ce que ça marche? Parce que moi, je ne me vois pas.
Si toi, tu ne vois pas, tu t'imagines que nous avons aussi un problème. Non, malheureusement, nous ne te voyons pas.
Bon, bah écoute...
Essaye de connecter ta caméra.
Je ne sais pas le faire, donc je suis vraiment désolé.
Bon. Alors en bilatéral, s'il te plaît, avec Peter par la suite. Merci beaucoup. Okay, we move on to other foreign affairs questions. I have one hand raised. No longer any hand raised, so thank you very much. And I go back to Karin, who had been waiting for the floor for some time. Assuming you can connect your camera.
Can you hear me now? Yes, thank you for the floor, and sorry if you already answered this because I missed the first 5 minutes of the briefing, but it's about this, the trade, the anti-coercion instrument that was reached tonight. And can you give me your view? I know it has to be triggered from the other side of the street, but viewed from the Commission side, can you give a hint on how strong a tool do you view this to be? Can it be compared to the NATO's Article 5 pledge, which means that it has to be meant as a deterrence, not ever used, hopefully? Or do you view it as a tool that can be used regularly in variation grade, depending on what what dispute is on the floor? Thanks.
Thank you very much. So you're asking us to explain the rationale behind the anti-coercion instrument, taking into account the fact that discussions are ongoing in the co-decision process, and we've seen indeed some progress, from what I understand, in the discussions. The first thing I would avoid doing is putting at the same level Article 5 of NATO and a piece of legislation in the economic security area from the Commission. In one instance, we are talking about war and peace, and in the other, we are talking about the economy. And I think we need to be very careful with the vocabulary that we are using. But I understand, nevertheless, that you're talking about deterrence and in a way solidarity when it comes to Article 5 of NATO, and whether the same applies to the anti-coercion instruments. So I will let Miriam explain a bit better what is the proposal's focus.
Thank you very much. So this gives us the opportunity to explain again the purpose of this instrument that we proposed in December 2021. So this is a new tool to counter the use of economic coercion by third countries. So it's a legal instrument in response to the EU and its member states becoming the target of deliberate economic pressure, which is happening more and more in recent years. And it will strengthen the EU's toolkit and will allow us to better defend ourselves on the global stage in these circumstances.
So if you wish, it's one element of our answer to attempts that can be made by parties to basically use trade, use the economy as a means of putting pressure either on EU companies or indirectly on the EU more generally. So from that point of view, it is politically extremely important and extremely relevant. Okay, I see no further questions on this. Nawab, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Miriam, can you give us an example when this coercion, or by whom was it used in the past? This is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So the instrument is not in place yet. Yesterday there was an agreement on several outstanding points, but there is still not the final agreement, which will happen very soon. So we do still expect a political trialogue to take place, and then we will have the final instrument, which will then need to enter into force, and then we will be able to deploy. It's very difficult at this stage to anticipate in which cases we will use it. What I can say, and I think this is a very important point, the instrument is meant to deter and de-escalate when there are specific coercive actions. So it will only be deployed as a last resort. It's not something that we will immediately put in place, but we are trying to find, in a very constructive manner with the third countries, ways to avoid this economic coercion. If ever there is no means to remove it, then we have a set of countermeasures that we could put in place to counter these coercive actions by third countries.
Okay. Any other trade-related questions for Miriam? No. Any other issues for us today? I see no further questions, so thank you very much, and see you tomorrow for the college readout.